All right, and welcoming you back here to the Orange Media Network studio. For those of you just joining us or tuning in, I know we're trying to build a larger audience through Facebook Live, so I recognize that crowd as well. My name is Keenan Puncocher alongside Kalib LaChapelle here. We are bringing you live updates all throughout the night of the election. Obviously a huge night here in the country. We're not only going to find out who the president is, hopefully by tonight, we're also going to focus on some key elections in Oregon, on some key ballot measures, as well as the governor's and the senator's race as well in Oregon. So when we left you, we were just kind of talking about the importance of early voting. We've seen a lot of the Latino vote be pretty important so far. And so I think what we should touch on now is, I've heard a lot about college-educated voters.
Yeah.
I think those were also a big focus of this election so far. Specifically white males, I know, was pretty important. And I know in a state like Georgia, for example, when we first started to see polls, we saw that college-educated white voters turned out a lot more than necessarily in the 2012. But it doesn't look like it might not be enough to carry Georgia for Hillary. But at the very least, I think college-educated white voters, we're seeing an increase definitely from 2012, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. Clinton's leading, if you just take into highly educated areas in Virginia, who's another battleground state. Clinton's leading by 16 points just in highly educated districts in Virginia. I feel like they're coming out in force for Clinton.
Yeah, it looks that way. And again, just to give a quick update here, the current math shows 128 electoral votes for Donald Trump and 97 for Hillary Clinton. Again, the magic number is 270. Now, I've always been a huge John King fan on CNN, so myself and Kalib are kind of mimicking that tonight. I don't have the big board for you guys, but we do have our laptops. We do have up-to-date coverage. We got a monitor, CNN ready. And the big argument right now, big paying attention moment is Florida. Looks like currently it is within a couple thousand votes. What's surprising a lot of people, I think, especially in Florida, is how highly the voter count has been so far. For example, like 93% of the vote is already currently in, and it looks like, according to CNN, Trump does have about a 2% lead in Florida. How big is Florida for Donald Trump if he wins?
Florida's huge. 538 had Clinton at 75% chance to win, and if she was to win Florida, it would jump to 93.
Wow.
Cutting Florida out from underneath Clinton would be a huge step for Donald Trump on his path to 270.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Florida has turned the tide in many elections. Obviously, we're paying close attention, as CNN is as well, to Ohio. Ohio's a huge state right now. Trump does surprisingly have about a 7% lead. Again, there's about 48% of the vote in, but in Ohio, about 7%. Obviously, we're seeing in the cities like Columbus, Toledo, Cleveland, Hillary is coming out in strong support there. But in the rural areas, again, we're seeing maybe a similarity to the 2012 election. Now, again, in 2012, Barack Obama was able to carry the state of Ohio. Touch a little bit base as well, Kalib, on how important Ohio is for Donald Trump as well.
Ohio is huge. Ohio for the Republican Party especially is huge. Ohio decides Republican races. Most Republican presidential candidates that don't win Ohio don't win. But as you can see, Donald Trump has about a 7% lead in Ohio, like you said, and we've got about 48% of the vote in there, so a little under halfway, but it's looking good for Donald Trump in Ohio.
Yeah, I think so. I think so far, if there's one kind of takeaway, it's that this race is looking pretty close, maybe closer than some people expected. But, you know, Kalib, we have kind of touched on the fact that it doesn't look like so far necessarily there's states that are really shocking a lot of people. You know, the Dakotas, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, all those states so far arguably for many years have gone to the Republican nominee. And so far that's the case for Donald Trump. But at least right now on the nationwide map, Donald Trump definitely is carrying more states than Hillary Clinton. But is it enough right now, from what you've seen, to say that Donald Trump might have a chance at this election?
I think he has a chance. If he can pull Florida and Ohio, I think he's got a strong chance to win the presidency.
Yeah, Florida and Ohio are key states. We're also paying attention closely to Pennsylvania, Colorado, New Hampshire. New Hampshire actually is a state right now that is in contention. Not a lot of the vote headed in right now, but it does look like, again, in New Hampshire, CNN right now on the big board is showing that Obama was able to carry that state. It is a state that is pretty important for Hillary Clinton as well as Donald Trump. Even though there's 4 electoral votes there, New Hampshire still historically has been a pretty important state.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say, Caleb?
Yeah, it's been a very important state historically, and currently Hillary's got about a 72 vote lead in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
It's tight there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, a quick update as well on Michigan. It looks like Donald Trump is about 18,000 votes ahead with only about 15% of the vote in. Donald Trump is leading Hillary Clinton in the key state of Michigan. Polls did just close 23 minutes ago at 6 o'clock. So it is looking so far. On a national scale, though, I do want to touch on this because you brought it up earlier, that Donald Trump right now is leading in the popular vote.
Yes, he is. He is currently leading in the popular vote by about 5%. That's down now. Trump was at about 5% earlier. He's now down to about 3.5%. Roughly 1.5 million votes that Trump's leading by in the popular election.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's going to be a close one. It might be a very long night. But with about 5% right now, again, this is very early here, but in Wayne County, that's the county historically where Detroit is in. Detroit right now is showing, at least on that county, pretty close race. Right now, it's about a 2,000, 3,000 vote lead for Hillary. But again, Ohio is an incredibly important state, as well as Michigan. We're going to pay close attention to that. Even Pennsylvania is starting to come in. But one thing I want to touch on as well, Caleb, because we're going to kind of go in a roundtable discussion here periodically throughout the night as states come in, is I want to talk a little bit about Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
Gary Johnson, the third-party candidate, he was gaining some steam nationally, had a little bit of a fudge moment where he couldn't remember where Aleppo was in Syria. I think it hurt him maybe a little bit more than people are giving it credit for. But what we're seeing, at least so far, is Gary Johnson has had pretty wide support in some of these key counties. Do you think that the theory of a spoiler candidate, so to speak, is true with Gary Johnson this year?
I believe it is, but to a certain extent from both sides. Talking to Republican-leaning individuals, they think a vote for Johnson is a vote for Clinton. But talking to Democratic-leading individuals, they believe that a vote for Johnson's a vote for Trump. I think it's coming from both sides. But yeah, Johnson's rolling at about 2% in Florida right now. It's a 2%'s a chunk. It's a big chunk.
It is, yeah. And I mean, even we're seeing right now here in Pennsylvania, we're actually showing one county in, speaking of, in Monroe County, it looks like, which holds about 1.3% of the population in Pennsylvania. Gary Johnson's leading by almost 20% in that state, with, again, only about 12% reporting in that county. But again, on the wide scale here in Pennsylvania, we're seeing that Gary Johnson has about a 2% victory gap there, with about 13% reporting in Pennsylvania. So we're seeing a lot of widespread support for Gary Johnson, not so much Jill Stein. She's that Green Party candidate that's never really been able to gain a lot of traction. She was notoriously seen graffitiing in an emblem on a construction equipment area, I remember correct, if I remember that. And I think she was even almost put in prison for that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, so Jill Stein's never really been able to gain a lot of traction, but Gary Johnson's kind of been that third option where, hey, if you don't really like Hillary Clinton and you don't really like Donald Trump, maybe voting for Gary Johnson. But as you and I both know, and we can enlighten some of the viewers here as well, is America hasn't been very friendly for third-party candidates.
Yeah, Ross Perot in '92, he was the most successful third-party candidate the U.S. has ever seen, and even he took away some votes from other people, but he didn't have a shot himself. He might have if he didn't drop out of the race and come back in, but Johnson's nowhere near Perot's status right now.
Right. No, and I think that will kind of be the theme that we see throughout the night, is Johnson's going to get some support, but probably not win any states. I'd be really surprised if he actually was able to win a state. In our historical electoral map, our electoral college in America, our system is not very friendly to third-party candidates, because we are a first past the post country where the candidate to win the most votes is able to win the majority of the electoral votes, and there's not a lot of support for third-party candidates. It's just like we saw with Bernie Sanders, he was maybe thinking about running as an independent candidate or a third party, but again, just not a lot of support for it.
No, there's not. I think the only state he has any hope at pulling out a upset victory in would be his home state of New Mexico. He's currently sitting at about 9% there, but even then, he's getting blown out still.
Yeah. Well, before we go to break here, I just want to leave you with this, in that right now, with about 94% of the vote in, currently Donald Trump is leading Hillary Clinton by about 2%. That's about a difference of 200,000 votes. Now, again, it is important to keep in mind there are a lot of key cities still coming in, the Orlando area, those counties are still coming in. But I think not only is it surprising how many votes are already counted in Florida, but that Donald Trump has at least somewhat of a lead going down in a stretch time.
Yeah, I mean, Orlando, the city area of Orlando, is probably going to go to Hillary Clinton, but it is very surprising that Donald Trump has a 2%, 1.5% lead heading into that vote being counted.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here, and then when we come back, we're going to touch on Virginia. Virginia is starting to come in hot at about 76%. Donald Trump also has a lead in that state. So stick with us for all the election updates live here from OMN.